Okay, welcome everyone here to UQ today. First, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and the custodianship of the lands on which we meet on today and pay my respects to their ancestors and their descendants. I will be very brief. I would like to welcome, of course, especially the Honourable Anastasia Palaszczuk MP, the Premier of Queensland and Minister for Trade, the Honourable Kate Jones MP, Minister for Innovation and Tourism Industry Development and Minister for Cross River Rail, and the Honourable Dr. Stephen Miles MP, Minister for Health and Minister for Ambulance Services. And I would also just like to acknowledge the incredible researchers we have here today. You will hear from one of them, Professor Paul Young, Dr. Keith Chappell, Dr. Dan Watterson and Professor Trent Munro. In the interest of time, I won't say much more other than to say that what we're doing here today is an absolute necessary part of the global response to the COVID-19 virus crisis, and you should be proud to know that this technology that we are supporting today is Queensland born and bred technology, and it is absolutely world class. The other thing is that we will all observe social distancing. So if you see yourselves not observing that, please rectify that immediately. And without further ado, I would like to welcome the Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk MP. Thank you, Premier.
Thank you. And from the start, I'm sorry you're not social distancing. I need everyone to do this, okay? No, we're not starting until you properly social distance, everybody. Okay, right. Look, thanks Peter, and it's wonderful to be here at UQ today. And can I say from the outset that my government is very pleased to provide $10 million to fast-track this research for a vaccine to combat coronavirus. As everyone knows, this is now becoming a serious issue here in Queensland and a serious issue here in Australia, and we've got to throw everything we've got at it. So $10 million today is a great step forward out of a $17 million package. Queensland is a world leader when it comes to research, and the progress that is being made here is very encouraging. I'm going to hand over now to Professor Paul Young to speak to you more about what's happening here with the research. Then Minister Kate Jones and Stephen Miles and I will then talk about health messages afterwards. But I must stress everyone must be social distancing. It is not a laughing matter, it is absolutely serious, and you are putting everyone's lives at risk if you are not doing it. So I'm very strict on this. I'm strict with it with everyone I'm around, and everybody should be doing exactly the same thing because we have to set the example. I'll hand over to Professor Paul Young.
Thank you, Premier. Vice-Chancellor, Premier Palaszczuk, Minister Jones, Minister Miles, my colleagues, a particular shout out back there on the left, Dr. Keith Chappell, Dr. Dan Watterson and Professor Trent Munro. On behalf of the team, I would like to start by thanking the state and federal governments, the Paul Ramsay Foundation, and also A2 Milk for their significant funding support being announced today. This funding will substantially accelerate our COVID-19 vaccine development in partnership with our colleagues at the Doherty Institute and CSIRO. This funding also builds on the considerable support that we have received from the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, or CEPI, to develop our rapid response vaccine pipeline. CEPI have been remarkably supportive and engaged partners on this journey, which began in 2018. Of course, our COVID-19 journey only began in January this year. We are living, as I'm sure you would all agree, through remarkable times, and remarkable times sometimes need radical ideas. And that's what today is about, the funding announced today is about. As you all have heard many times, the typical timeline for vaccine development has been thrown out the window, normally many years, even decades, with many referring to the possibility of a vaccine in 18 months. That would be remarkable. Make no bones about that. That has never happened before. It's well ahead of any previous vaccine development timeline. But a vaccine is required even sooner than this. Just to give you an idea, most vaccine development pipelines are usually linear, with success at regular milestones triggering the next phase of development. That typically means that it's only after preclinical studies that we move on to clinical work, to determine vaccine safety and efficacy, then on the regulatory approval, and it's only then when large pharma actually starts manufacturing at scale. Our somewhat radical approach, which this funding will go towards supporting, is to dismantle that linear pipeline and bring large-scale vaccine manufacture forward, essentially to run in parallel with our remaining preclinical and clinical studies. Following this strategy, we should be able to have a vaccine ready to deploy as soon as the clinical studies have been completed, with vaccine safety and efficacy demonstrated. And I must emphasise that. We're not cutting any corners in terms of ensuring that this vaccine is going to be safe and efficacious in humans. We will go through those clinical studies, but we should be ready to deploy as soon as that is known. With that approach, we should carve about 6 months off our delivery timeline, and so bring that 18-month timeline down to about 12 months, so beginning of 2021. It's ambitious, but we believe it's an attainable goal. Let me emphasise, I really do need to emphasise this. This 12-month timeline is about as good as we'll get for a vaccine, and that is if everything goes according to plan. So in the meantime, we have a clear and present danger, and developments in diagnostics, repurposing of existing drugs to treat those who are ill are continuing at pace. And they will be in play probably earlier than the vaccine. That work is underway here at UQ, but it's also underway in other institutions and companies within Australia and also globally. So in the meantime, what we all do now is absolutely of critical importance. So I'll just reinforce the Premier's message about distancing. It isn't a joking matter. Many of us are extraordinarily concerned that in many of the liberal democracies, this is being taken as a joke. It is not a joke. In England at the moment, I can send you links to some commentary from some of the clinicians having to deal with overloaded hospital environments right now. And they're concerned that they're still seeing people going out to pubs, enjoying themselves, albeit pubs have now been closed. But at the time of this interview, they were still out there in close association, and the spread was still happening. So what it will be like in 2 weeks' time is going to be a disaster for their health service. We are a little bit behind that curve. We need to be doing this right now. So it's important that we limit the impact of this pandemic as much as possible. I just get out there. Vaccines are important. That's why we're doing this. But there are no magic bullets at the moment. Listen to and adhere to the public health measures of physical distancing. I like to call it physical distancing rather than social distancing. I think we should remain socially engaged, however we can do that over the internet, for example. And hand washing. These may sound trivial, but they're absolutely important measures that will not only protect you, but also those around you. In finishing, I'd particularly like to acknowledge our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Peter Hoy, for his tireless support and advocacy for this vaccine program, and indeed the entire UQ team for their support. It's been quite extraordinary. Vice-Chancellor, I am proud to be part of this university, absolutely proud. A very special thanks to the COVID vaccine team. This is a group of postdocs, research assistants and PhD students who have been working very long days in the lab, pretty much 7 days a week since January. But the work continues, I'm afraid, to pass on to them. Finally, I would also like to thank again both the state and federal governments, the Paul Ramsay Foundation and sponsors such as A2 Milk for their vision in supporting the program. Thanks very much.
Professor, could we ask you a couple of questions, please?
I think
We'll do questions with the researchers after the government
Okay.
conference, if that's okay.
All right.
Well, as the Premier said, today is a historic day for Queensland. What Queensland is doing is playing its part in the global fight to find a vaccine for coronavirus. Every month that we can save in developing the virus will save millions of lives globally. This is the hard work of UQ and the amazing researchers that have been here working since January. What they're hoping is that we're currently in preclinical trials. They want to move to clinical trials in around June, July, in the hope that we can deliver this vaccine, as you've heard from Professor Paul Young, by early 2021. This is the Advanced Queensland in action. I want to acknowledge the Premier and her vision for continuing to invest in the best and brightest of Queensland. Just think, Queensland could be the home to the global vaccine for coronavirus. And as I said, the reason why we've committed our $10 million at a state level is because we understand that every month that we can save in delivering this vaccine faster, we will save lives. So I want to acknowledge and congratulate the team that is working around the clock here at UQ. We are delivering this in partnership not only with the CSIRO, but also the federal government, and I want to thank them for their support as well. This is Team Queensland leading the way in developing a vaccine that will help address coronavirus globally. Thank you. Say your full name and your title.
So, Dr. Keith Chappell, the School of Chemistry and Molecular Biosciences, University of Queensland.
Could you just spell that for us, please, Doctor?
CHAPPEELL. Take a question, sir.
How many people do you guys have working on this vaccine?
So we're originally a small team. We've got around about 20 people within our group here, but we're working with other institutes, Melbourne, Australian National University, CSIRO, Untitled Institute, and also a range of other groups around the world. We've got support from GE, Pantheon, and a range of other people as well.
You're working pretty hard. What sort of hours are you guys putting in today?
So the team is working extraordinarily hard, where everyone hasn't had a day off since this began, and we're working late into the night as well.
Doctor, can you give us a timeline on this? We heard just before possibly 12 months that we could have a vaccine. From your perspective, what's the timeline looking like now with this additional funding?
Yeah, so the key is that we're undertaking as much safety testing and animal testing as we can to show that this vaccine is safe and effective. In parallel, we'll be gearing up manufacture. So as soon as it's deemed that we have enough information on the safety and that this vaccine will work, we'll have stocks there ready to go. It's difficult to put a time frame on it.
So June, July, human testing is...
Middle of the year, we'll be ready to go for phase 1 trials.
And describe phase 1 to us.
So phase 1 is around 100 participants, healthy adult volunteers.
How do you feel personally to be part of a team that may have created a vaccine to cure coronavirus, given the situation around the world at the moment?
So people keep telling me congratulations. I don't think that's in order yet. You know, we've got a long, long way to go. The vaccine is looking extraordinarily good. It's looking positive up until this point, but we have a long way to go to bridge between what's done in a university to what can be done on the scale of millions of doses, and also we have a lot of work to do to demonstrate that this is safe and effective.
Are you guys having to take any extra measures to ensure that you don't get sick so that you can keep working?
Absolutely. The university's deemed us critical staff. We work separated now into 2 teams so that if one person gets sick, and that team needs to go into quarantine, we'll have a backup team working in parallel.
Are you at risk of contracting the coronavirus? Is that a thing?
I'm trying to take as much precautions as everyone should be in terms of social distancing and limiting my interactions.
And Doctor, if you could just give us an idea of what the funding from the government has allowed you to do, what has that given you? You know, for people at home that are just throwing, it's money going into testing. Yeah, what does it mean? What does it mean for you guys and your team going forward?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Professor Trent Munro. So this money really lets us start to think about proceeding with development in a more unconstrained way. So as Keith mentioned, while the folks have been working 24/7 in the lab, we've also been working 24/7 to try and assemble a group of national and international teams that can help us push this as fast as possible. I think one of the things we identified a couple of weeks ago was that's going to take significant funding. So while, as Paul mentioned, CEPI continues to support us, financially, and that's been key in getting us to here, this additional funding will let us bring more teams on board and teams who have the type of experience we need to scale up this vaccine as soon as possible. So, we should be careful in saying there are no guarantees of success. This is going to be technically very, very challenging, but this funding lets us push forward in a way that we wouldn't have dreamed possible just a few weeks ago.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Premier.
Thank you. All right, look, thanks very much. That's very encouraging news. And of course, the Queensland Government, I know Queenslanders are prepared to do everything we can to support this team to develop a vaccine as soon as possible. So fingers crossed. Look, I just want to say a few things today and then I'll hand over to the Health Minister for our latest update. And as I said today, social distancing is absolutely imperative. Everyone has a role to play and everyone needs to do it. Secondly, can I thank everyone for listening to my pleas on Friday about not having a big night out. Now we're going to go that next step. I need your family to stay in your neighbourhood as much as possible unless you are working. Now, we've seen those extraordinary scenes down at Bondi Beach, and I know that we have the best beaches in the world. But coronavirus can spread easily and people are not observing social distancing. Coronavirus is on the Gold Coast. So we know that people have confirmed cases on the Gold Coast. And I need everyone on the Gold Coast to be listening very clearly to the messages that I'm saying. It is a beautiful weekend. And I tell you what, I'd love my family to be travelling to the coast as well, but they're not. I need everyone to do their part. And as much as possible now, over the coming weeks and months, I need you to stay near your village. That means you can support things in your local village, you can shop in your local neighbourhoods, but as much as possible, you need to restrict your non-essential travel and stay close to home. That's what we do during cyclones, that's what we do during floods. This is absolutely important that now in Queensland we are playing our part. Also on Friday, I said very clearly that people over 60 who have an underlying health condition should be limiting their social interactions and staying at home as much as possible, except for essential work, essential business, such as the pharmacy, going to the bank, or going to supermarkets. This is really tough for Queenslanders, and this is going to be some tough love for Queenslanders. But I have your best interests at heart. We all pitch in and help together, and we do the right thing when we go through cyclones and floods. You can't see coronavirus. I said on Friday, it's like being hit by 30 cyclones. The cyclone is here. So we all need to play our part, limit our social interactions, and please, please do the right thing. I know there are some people out there that are not listening. Please share information on Facebook and get the right information out. Listen to the experts, listen to the authorities. I am telling Queenslanders nothing different than I'm telling my own family. So please, let's all do the right thing. These are tough times ahead. There are going to be tougher measures. I know that there's going to be tougher measures over the days and weeks to come. And Queensland, it is beautiful. But I want Queenslanders here for the future, and we have got to take these measures now. So I'll hand over to Stephen Miles to give us an update. But I 100% back in what the Prime Minister said about social distancing and that all non-essential travel should be cancelled. And I also welcome the federal stimulus package. Our Cabinet Budget Review Committee will be meeting tomorrow, and of course we have front and centre measures we can put in place to help Queenslanders as well. Are there any questions before I hand over to Minister Miles?
Yeah, Victorian schools have, it's just breaking news in the past half an hour, Premier, that they will be closing from Tuesday. Their holidays do start earlier than our school holidays in Queensland, but what are your thoughts on that? Are there any plans to close?
I haven't seen those reports, but there is a National Cabinet this evening, and I know that we are looking at a range of measures. As I said, there are going to be more tough measures over the coming days and over the coming weeks, and we will need everyone to abide by them.
Given the new non-essential travel announcements this morning, should the local elections be going ahead on Saturday?
We have absolutely clear advice that the elections are fine if people are keeping their distance. We have people at polling booths, is my understanding, that are making sure that happens. But of course, people have the opportunity, and they have been voting early. So my message to people is, where you can, go to your the pre-polls early and cast your vote. And of course, we've had overwhelming numbers of postal votes as well.
Given the concerns around the world with the shortage of ventilators, how many ventilators are there in Queensland?
I am advised that we have ordered those extra 100 ventilators. So I'm very satisfied with what my Chief Health Officer is telling me about that. But can I just say this to everyone? We are seeing what is happening overseas. Make no mistake, we will see that happening here in Australia unless we take these very deliberative and proactive measures now. Every measure we take will save lives. Every measure we take. So everyone, please do the right thing, and we'll be updating you as regularly as possible. We need to look after our aged care people, our people who are over 60 with one of those underlying health conditions, and we need to protect ourselves by having less interactions. Let me give you an example. As Premier of this state, I would probably see 1,000 people a week on average, between 500 and 1,000. I have now limited my social interactions to possibly like this event and the people I'm meeting at work. This is how serious it is, everyone. Okay, it's not a time to go and have parties. It is not a time to go with your mates to the beach. It's not a time to go with your mates to a pub. We can do that when we get through this. Okay? So let's all do this together. I'll hand over to
Do we know exactly how?
On that, Premier,
Yeah.
tonight at National Cabinet, Victoria and New South Wales will both be pushing for further shutdowns of non-essential services to pubs and clubs. Is that something that you'll be supporting?
I think people heard my message on Friday. My message on Friday was pretty clear. Don't go and have a big night out. And if we have to take stronger measures, we will take stronger measures. And that's what the National Cabinet will discuss tonight. I have already been pleading with people on the Friday about the weekend. And like I said, we have to take the strongest actions we possibly can as a National Cabinet.
One more, Premier. Who is able to enforce the social distancing? We've got the task force for the party precincts, but what about during the day if people are walking too close? Can anyone say anything to them?
Well, I've been saying it to you today. Stand up for yourselves and say it. Say it very clearly. You've got to keep those distances. It's imperative.
Any plans to shut down beaches so we don't see what happens down in Bondi?
I'm very concerned about what happened in Bondi, and as I've said very clearly, this social distancing is very important, and I will be looking at those matters very closely. I appreciate that some people live in those neighbourhoods close to the beaches, but we have to make sure that everyone is doing the right thing and complying. And like I said, we can have a great time in 6 months when we're through all this, and hopefully it'll be 6 months. But now is not the time for complacency. We need to be strong, we need to be tough, and everyone has to play their part. I'm also concerned that there's people out there that think this is not going to happen to us. Wake up. It is. Wake up. So we need to do everything we possibly can. I might hand over to Minister Miles now. Okay.
Thank you, Premier. Overnight, Queensland Health can confirm 38 additional cases of COVID-19 positive tests here in Queensland. That brings the total number so far in Queensland to 259. They continue to be concentrated in the southeast and continue to be concentrated amongst those returning to Queensland from overseas. We are seeing thousands of Queenslanders returning home from countries where COVID-19 is spreading. We want them here. They are our loved ones, and we want to take care of them if they get sick in our hospitals. But that is what is driving the current numbers. In terms of positive testing. One of those additional cases was believed to have been contagious on the 13th of March when they had lunch at Rickshaw's restaurant on the Gold Coast. Our teams are working hard to contact everyone who's been in touch with anyone who has been confirmed as a positive case, but obviously that's hard in the case of restaurants. And so we are asking that anyone who was at Rickshaw's between 12 and 1:30 on the 13th of March monitor their health, and if they become unwell, they will be eligible for testing. Also late yesterday, the Chief Health Officer, Dr. Jeanette Young, authorised all liquor licensing inspectors to be public health officers for the purpose of our public health emergency order. What that means is that all of Queensland's liquor licensing officers will be authorised to enforce the social distancing, the physical distancing rules that have been put in place also by order. They are the appropriate officers to do that. Obviously, they enforce all of our other rules on pubs and clubs and licensed restaurants, and so they will be able to enforce and potentially fine those who breach those laws.
Does the Chief Health Officer have to hand out those fines under the new rules and regulations?
We haven't yet had to fine anyone for non-compliance. In every case, once they've received a warning, they have complied. And by and large, people have been very, very compliant. In some cases, we're asking people to do things that are very inconvenient for them and very damaging for their businesses. But it's incredibly important that we do. The more we can contain this virus to those returning from overseas, the more we can stop it from spreading locally, the longer we have for our researchers here at UQ to develop this vaccine. And that's what this race is all about. The race is to reduce local transmission, contain local transmission for as long as we possibly can so that we can develop treatments and ultimately a vaccine. That's how we'll save lives.
How many people are in isolation today? Do you have an estimate?
We don't have an estimate of the total number in quarantine. The recent numbers this week have been such that we've had to focus our teams on that contact tracing work, and we haven't been able to do the data entry work of returning visitors. We will be able to update that once we get on top of the contact tracing work.
And any idea of all of the cases that we've had, how many people have recovered?
I don't have now that we are increasingly treating people in their homes, it's very difficult to put a clear number each day on the number that have fully recovered, but you would expect that we're seeing increasing numbers of people discharged, people with confirmed negative tests.
Minister, do you know how many ventilators we have in Queensland?
So we did a ventilator audit very early in our preparations. That found that there would be roughly 500 ventilators available to us at that time. We've since purchased another 110, which is a very significant increase. It's important to note that not all of those ventilators are in intensive care units. Ventilators are used elsewhere in our hospitals for activities that we're likely to wind down during the peak of the COVID-19 outbreak. And so that is the number that we expect to be available for us to deliver a ventilation to patients who need it because they're infected with COVID-19.
So of that 610, how many are free at the moment? Do you know that?
So the 610 will be available and ready for when we reach that peak. There are 500 in our hospitals right now.
And when are you expecting the first patient? When are you expecting the first patients of COVID-19 to need ICU treatment?
Oh, look, that's very difficult to tell. The longer we can keep our older Queenslanders safe from this virus, the longer it will be before we will need that level of treatment. But of course, it could be the case that happens much sooner. We're doing our best to delay it as long as we possibly can.
Are there any plans to introduce legislation so police distancing, given the situation is getting so serious?
Police have also been authorised as public health officers under that public.
Thanks, guys.